The score will mean absolutely nothing, but there are still a lot of reasons to watch the Chiefs versus the Cardinals preseason football, and I am here to give you a position by position rundown of just why. Now, in what I think is maybe an ironic twist on this type of thing, this will not be the most exhaustive list. Next week will be a more exhaustive list, as it will be this game which sheds some light on how the coaching staff feels about these players. We've spent a lot of time the last couple of weeks watching them in training camp, but I think that the game time footage will give us a whole lot better of a feel, not just on how the players are performing, that's always the case, but what the coaching staff actually thinks of these players. What position? So this is going to be a lot of situational football. What positions do the coaches put these players in to figure out whether or not they can do certain things? And I think that with the offensive line, that is especially true. The first thing to watch on the offensive line is obviously Kingsley Suamataia, the biggest question mark along the offensive line, at least in the minds of fans, because I think we have pretty much made up our minds on Josh Simmons, but there seems to be a very big split, chasm, if you will, schism, if you might, along the fan base, among the fan base over Kingsley Suamataia. I am of the opinion that he can be a starting left guard in the NFL, and a good one. There are others who hope that's Jalen Moore, and others yet who will run down any number of players on the roster and hope that that player ends up being the starting left guard for the Chiefs. I think that the tools Kingsley Suamataia has would make him a Pro Bowl offensive guard if he is able to execute. And I went back and I watched the Ravens game from last year, because that was where we really got to see him play left tackle. And there were plays where I thought he looked really good. He did look as if at times he were reading the situation too much, that is, not dictating the flow of football, but instead trying to figure out where things were going. And he was a very young player. It was his very first NFL football game. And I think that that is reasonable. I do think that he has upside in the future. I have not given up on Kingsley. Seeing what he does, it might only be a couple of plays that we see him, but seeing what he does and how he performs at the offensive guard position will go a long way towards helping some of us make up our minds one way or another. How much does Josh Simmons play? Andy Reid has said that each quarterback will get a quarter of play. That is not going to be true. He said the same thing, to the best of my recollection, last season, and that is not how things played out once kickoff happened. I think the same is true for very much of the starting offense in general. There are, however, reasons to keep Josh Simmons on the field. Namely, he is a young player. This is his rookie season. He's going to be protecting Patrick Mahomes' blind side week one, snap one. At least that's how it would seem at this time. But he does have that injury that he's coming off of, and you might not want to push it there, right? So I think that this is going to be, if he is on the field longer than the rest of the starting offensive line, it will tell us a whole lot about how healthy they believe Josh Simmons is. If he is only on the field as long as the rest of the offensive line, I don't think that is a tell for whether or not they think Josh Simmons is healthy. I just think that it would be a very, very good sign if he does play a few more snaps, maybe a couple extra series after Trey Smith, etc., have stepped off the field. It means they have 100% confidence in his knee. Where does Jalen Moore line up? We have seen him at both left guard and right tackle in training camp up in St. Joseph, Missouri. But I think if I were a betting man, I would put money on Jalen Moore starting this game at right tackle. You have Jawan Taylor coming off of that knee issue, and I think that it would make some sense not to overextend him here in this opening preseason game. He has missed a lot of time in training camp. He's got quite a bit of time to get back in shape, so I would not push him here. I would let Jalen Moore take all of those snaps. Lots of J names along that offensive line that are new here or interchangeable here, and it is throwing me off sometimes. Number 4 here, what is the number 2 offensive line? It's not a big deal for this game, right? So I don't think it's really worth reading too much into this game. The second offensive line is Wanye Morris, Mike Caliendo, Hunter Nourzad, CJ Hansen, and Ethan Driscoll, whatever the combination is. I don't think that is necessarily all that important for this game, but it is necessary to have that note. So moving forward, we can see if it stays the same. That, I think, is the big deal there. The number 5 thing worth watching along the offensive line is the aforementioned Ethan Driscoll. The 6'8" offensive tackle was a UDFA out of Marshall who spent all of last season on the 53-man roster. Very surprising, but I think it was a sign that they didn't think they could sneak him through waivers and get him on the practice squad. He even eked out a few reps towards the end of the year, but he may find himself on the bubble this season. This is where Yasir Durant would prove to be a great copy and paste situation for the Kansas City Chiefs. Remember, a few years ago, the Chiefs had a UDFA offensive tackle out of Mizzou named Yasir Durant, who I believe transitioned to offensive guard for the Chiefs. But he was a real big guy, didn't play a whole lot, was a UDFA, and Brett Veach traded him for a 7th-round pick that ended up becoming Jalen Watson. That has been a very good trade for the Kansas City Chiefs. Could Ethan Driscoll find himself as part of such a trade? The Chiefs do still have Wanye Morris. They do still have Kingsley Suamataia, who has, I think, upside at offensive tackle. They have Jalen Moore. They have Jawan Taylor. They have Josh Simmons. Is Ethan Driscoll really going to make this 53-man roster? And if not, maybe a little shine and shop action. Get him some action, show him off on the field. Last year in the preseason, he really showed out. He showed how mobile he was. He was upfield making blocks. I believe it was Deneric Prince had like a 20-yard block, and Ethan Driscoll was right there as Deneric Prince was being tackled. So does Ethan Driscoll have any trade value? And if so, we might see the Chiefs make that move. Then I think that this is very interesting to see. Are there any diamonds in the rough for the Kansas City Chiefs? There's a lot of names on that offensive line for the Chiefs, and it's been a long time, really. So I think the one name that'll get thrown out there is Trey Smith, but Trey Smith, I think everyone knew was going to be good. It's been a long time since there has been a positive surprise, to the best of my recollection, along the offensive line. Someone who in the preseason, everybody started going, hey, look at that. That guy's really big and strong and can probably keep Patrick Mahomes upright. It's been a long time, I think, since there was a pleasant surprise there. So is there anybody who stands out as just a gamer and ends up tearing things up on the offensive line? A little bit we saw that with Ethan Driscoll last year, but nothing really that came to fruition. And I don't know if Ethan Driscoll makes the roster this year. At the running back spot, do not pay attention to anything from Isaiah Pacheco or Kareem Hunt. I think they will just try to get them through the motions in this game and really reaffirm some soundness of assignment. So in different blocking schemes, what are we doing here? Put it on tape so we have a coachable moment. I think that's all you're going to get from Isaiah Pacheco or Kareem Hunt. That's all I want to get from Isaiah Pacheco or Kareem Hunt in meaningless preseason football. Number 2 here, Brashard Smith. Is he running back 3 or running back 4? I think we can all agree that he looks like he has the potential to be running back number 3, but he has to answer the question, can he run against an NFL defensive line? That sounds odd, right? We're this far into things. Of course he can. But just ask Ashton Jeanty what that college to NFL conversion rate feels like. Did not go all that pleasantly for Mr. Jeanty. And that was the question about Jeanty coming out. He played all of this bully ball in college. Will he be able to do that at the NFL level? He played sort of at the running back position, he played kind of jazz, right? It doesn't matter what your blockers are doing. You are good enough to go out there and just make your own sheet music. And that's not necessarily how things work in the NFL. So will will Brashard Smith's game translate? I think so, because I think Brashard Smith is more of a one-cut accelerate type of runner. And then obviously the passing game stuff. And then we have Elijah Mitchell versus Carson Steele. Elijah Mitchell, in my opinion, has the potential to be a number one running back in the NFL. His rookie season, he showed that he can tote the rock. He showed that he can be the guy. He has had injury trouble. Versus Carson Steele, who does not have the ceiling that Elijah Mitchell has, and if we're being honest, has the lowest ceiling on the football team as far as the running backs are concerned. I do not at this point see Carson Steele making the 53. I think he's an interesting running back. I think that he could end up on the practice squad, but I don't see him being one of the top 4 running backs here. And the point can obviously be made, yeah, but they need a fullback. Well, do they? Right? You can use Noah Gray as an H-back. You can put Noah Gray in the backfield. Robert Tonyan, I think, is going to give you some of that flexibility as well. So I'm just not sure that Carson still makes the roster, but I'm not sure that Elijah Mitchell is going to be the player that once he was. We haven't heard a whole lot from him in training camp, so we will need to see if there is a glimmer of that former potential there. At tight end, I do not expect to see Jared Wiley, so most of this game could be the Robert Tonyan show, because Travis Kelce is probably going to play 2 or 3 snaps. Then you're going to get a little bit of Noah Gray, but not too much. Then I think Jared Wiley gets skipped on the depth chart, because why put him in there if he's having struggles? And then you get to Robert Tonyan. But do you really want Robert Tonyan on the field the whole time? Well, the Chiefs do still have Joquarius Spivey, and they have Trey Watson. Trey Watson has been kept around for a reason, despite the fact that he has been injured to this point. I think he is the type of tight end that they want to have somewhere on the roster. I think he could be the future Robert Tonyan. Some of those other names that they have had as the 3rd and 4th tight end in the past. Trey Watson is a guy that is strong. He is a competent blocker. I think that he has the tools to be a more dominant blocker, but he's not that right now. Maybe he finds himself on the practice squad this season, learning to block a little bit better. And it's starting to feel like Jake Brenningstool might find himself on the IR this year, so the practice squad tight end position is possibly available for Trey Watson. Wide receiver, now this could be, I could talk all day about what I want to see from the wide receivers in this game. I will not do that, but I will point out some things. Rice and Worthy will play a few plays, in my opinion. Not worth taking too much from this, right? Hollywood, I would not put him out there at all. Try to confuse Jalen Royals. This is what I'm going to see from the coaching staff, is put Jalen Royals in so many positions that his head starts to spin, because then you have the footage to teach him. You are there then and thereby proving to him, hey, this playbook is going to be much more difficult than anything you've dealt with, because I think a lot of guys kind of understand that, and maybe Jalen Royals is one of those guys, but I think that what you start to see around the mid-season mark in the NFL is a whole lot of rookies kind of mentally check out because they get short-fused. And if you can prove to Jalen Royals this early, hey, man, get in the book, then it will prove wonders for this team come late in the year when Jalen Royals is contributing so much more. Plus, I think he's going to have to play early and often in this season, as the Chiefs are now on record somewhere saying that they suspect Rashee Rice will serve between a 4 and a 6 game suspension. I almost said sentence. It's just a 30-day sentence. But can Tyquan Thornton cash in for a couple of catches? The big hubbub around Tyquan Thornton has been training camp, but the mini hubbub around Tyquan Thornton has been the fact that Patriots fans won't shut up, that he can't do it in games, that he is a practice warrior. And, well, we have just a preseason game, but a game. And Tyquan Thornton can prove whether or not he can do these things in a game situation where there's someone else trying to catch the football too. I don't expect him to see him on the field with Patrick Mahomes, so things will be more difficult from that situation. By the way, I skipped the quarterback position here. Not really worth talking about, even though you're looking at Bailey Zappi versus Chris Oladokun. The thing there is, maybe I should have put it down. So Gardner Minshew's the backup. You're looking at a battle for the practice squad position between Bailey Zappi and Chris Oladokun. But I don't know if Bailey Zappi makes it through the waiver wire. I don't know if you can sign Bailey Zappi to your practice squad. Someone else, I think, will claim him. The quarterback position is too important in the NFL. The last, was it last or the fourth? The fourth thing we're talking about here with wide receivers, Jason Brownlee versus Nico Remigio versus Juju Smith-Schuster. And I think a lot of people will sort of scoff at that. Juju Smith-Schuster competing with Jason Brownlee. Right? Juju Smith-Schuster has done so much at the NFL level. Jason Brownlee has done diddly squat. That's true. That's very true. Jason Brownlee has a very high ceiling and has started to explode in training camp. Juju Smith-Schuster has not thus far in training. He's had some connections with Mahomes, I will grant you that. Brownlee has been popping off in training camp the last few days. Nico Remigio is the punt returner at this point, and Juju Smith-Schuster has been a long-time safety blanket for Patrick Mahomes. Those are the plus sides of all three of those wide receivers. But Brownlee has never really done much on an NFL field. Nico hasn't proven to be much of a wide receiver yet, and there are a few players, Brashard Smith, the aforementioned Brashard Smith, for example, who would be interesting punt returners. And if you look at Juju Smith-Schuster last year, if he is such a safety blanket for Mahomes, Juju Smith-Schuster last year had just 231 yards all season. That is despite having a 130-yard game and a 50-yard reception. Nearly 20% of Juju Smith-Schuster's over 20% of Juju Smith-Schuster's yards came on a single reception during the course of all of last year. So there are both positives and negatives, upsides and downsides for all three of these guys. Then we're looking at the battle for the practice squad. Mac Delana and Elijah Badger are both interesting UDFA wide receivers, in my opinion. Do either of them have the potential that their physical tools suggest they possess? I thought at one point in time Elijah Badger might be a threat to make this roster. That was before Tyquan Thornton looked like a reincarnation of Randy Moss in training camp. That was before Jason Brownlee exploded. That was before Nico Remigio was proven as the punt returner. It does not appear to me that either of these players have any shot right now at making the 53, but I think both of them have the opportunity to make the practice squad, or at least either of them has the opportunity to make the practice squad. Moving on to defensive line, does Omar Norman-Lott look good versus an NFL offensive line? Been a relatively quiet training camp for Omar Norman-Lott, despite the fact that he has been working in predominantly with the ones. Now, worth noting that the Kansas City Chiefs have two of the best interior offensive linemen in the NFL in Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith. Good enough to keep most rookies quiet for an entire training camp. On the other side of things, Kingsley Suamataia might not yet have proven himself to be a Pro Bowl offensive guard, but he is very big, he is very strong, and he is very fast. If you don't have the technique worked out yet that you will need to have in the NFL, a guy like Kingsley Suamataia can definitely put you in your place for most of a training camp, especially if it's your first training camp. Can Omar Norman-Lott stand out? Can he pop on screen and just get some attention? Next, does Ashton Gillotte look as quick versus guys in the NFL? He had a good first step in college, the ultimate motor in college, deceptively strong in college. How much does any of that translate to the NFL? If Ashton Gillotte translates to the NFL, I have said that I think he can be kind of Mike Danna-ish. I think he can be kind of Mike Danna plus some quick twitch fibers. And I'm pretty accurate on Mike Danna comparisons thus far. We'll get to that in a moment. But if he can be that, if he can be Mike Dana plus some quick twitch, guys, the Chiefs' defensive line will be better immediately just for that addition, because when Charles Minhue was out and Mike Dana was on the sideline, there was kind of a gaping hole there at the other defensive end position. Malik Herring, in all fairness to Malik Herring, he has outperformed how it was that the Chiefs acquired him, which was as a UDFA. In all fairness to Malik Herring, he should not have been on this team for this long, right? He is probably a replacement level player in the NFL. Ashton Gillotte could have the tools to finally, that sounds too celebratory, Ashton Gillotte might have the tools to make the roster better. I'll just say it that way. Where do Fabian Levette and Keough Izzard play? Do they make an impact? I'm not sure both of them can make the 53. I think that one of them probably makes the 53. My money would be on Fabian Levette. My heart is kind of with Keough Izzard because I do think that he has an extreme amount of upside. I think either of them might be able to pass through waivers and get on the 53 or on the practice squad, as long as they don't look too good in the preseason. But let's be frank, the depth at the defensive tackle position suggests that if either of these players pop even a little bit in the preseason, Jerry Tillery will be the one in the unemployment line, not Keough Izzard or Fabian Levette. And then the final thing to watch on the defensive line, in my opinion, at least for game one, is FAU a Chief in 2025? So it doesn't do you any good to cut him because you still have to pay him. But I think that the Chiefs might have it in mind to trade FAU. Normally, what happens in this situation in the NFL is two different general managers will save face by trading first-round busts. There will be another general manager somewhere in the league with a guy he drafted in the first round or high, right? It could be a second round, etc. And he just can't figure out how to make them work. And he calls up Brett Veach and says, I kind of like that FAU. He's got a little bit of pop to him, a little bit of electricity. Hasn't been very consistent, but I'll take a chance on him. Would you like player X, Y, or Z? And Brett Veach will say, yeah, let's both save a little bit of face, trade these players, and have a fresh face, a fresh start for them on a different roster. I think that could be in the works for FAU prior to the 2025 season. I don't want that to be the case because I want FAU to be the edge that he has the potential to be. Moving on to linebackers, do we see Leo Chenal move around? There have been hints that this will be the year we start to see Leo Chenal deployed into the A-gap, lining up off of the edge, things like that. Can we see it a little bit in the preseason, Mr. Spagnuolo? I need that directly into my veins. Jeffrey Bassa, where is he? Been a very quiet training camp for Jeffrey Bassa as well. I would like to see him get extensive playing time in this game just to try to feel out some of the NFL. I'm not sure that's going to happen. Cam Jones versus Cooper McDonald. I think there is only one spot available, potentially one spot available after those top five, I put four there, but five linebackers. Is it possible that either of these guys slips through waivers and makes it onto the practice squad? It is possible, especially because of the positional value of linebackers. So Cam Jones or Cooper McDonald, maybe Cam Jones and Cooper McDonald, I think would pass through and be on the Chiefs practice squad if they decide to sign back here, which leaves a very big question for Brandon George. Brandon George, a super athlete at the linebacker position, almost definitely would pass through waivers because he hasn't shown a whole lot on the football field. But will they have enough spots for the guy whose ceiling might be special teams contributor? A couple years ago, just to show you how far this position group has come, a couple years ago, that was Jack Cochran, the UDFA, who had some pretty good athletic traits. They didn't even pass him through the waivers. He was just on the roster as a UDFA. This year, someone like Brandon George, who has even more extreme physical tools than Jack Cochran, might not even end up on the practice squad. At cornerback, I doubt we see any of Christian Fulton. hopefully we start seeing him at practice this coming week. Then we have Jalen Watson versus Najee Johnson. The Chiefs staff seems to be doing the same thing this year that they did Jalen Watson last year, where all preseason it seems like he has competition for his spot, but the moment the season starts, well, guys, it's him. Will it be Jalen Watson just going ahead and getting the nod at cornerback 2 the first time the defense rolls out there? Noel Williams, he's had a pretty quiet training camp so far. He's going to need to start making some noise if he's going to be a part of the cornerback rotation for the Kansas City Chiefs. I think definitely he has the upside, but he has to show that that his downside is good enough to be on the field at all times. How much does Melvin Smith play? A name that with which you might not be familiar, but Melvin Smith, I think, has an inside track on being the practice squad cornerback. I think he has some good springiness and some suddenness in his game. I think he could be a real-life NFL corner with a little bit of time on the practice squad. At safety, where does Jaden Hicks play and how much? I want this to be the breakout season for Jaden Hicks. He was primed at the end of last year to break out, and I think we might see it here. Where does Christian Roland Wallace stand? He was surprisingly low on the depth chart when that came out. Was that just as a motivational tool? Then we have Mike Edwards, who seems to be a part of the plans for the Chiefs in the 2025 season. But would the Chiefs rather keep more players for the special teams and young players to develop? Will Mike Edwards run out there for kickoff team, etc.? I'm not sure. Mike Edwards had more luck his final season in Kansas City before leaving than he had last year. So we will see what the future has in store for Mike Edwards. I think and this is not a popular opinion, I think there's about a 50% chance that Mike Edwards doesn't make the roster. Glendon Miller, a UDFA from whom we have not heard in camp, but I think he has all the tools necessary to be a defensive contributor in the NFL, even if he has to start on special teams. I'm not sure he makes it through waivers, especially as teams have gotten a taste of what it is that is actually on their roster. Surely some teams are surprised to the downside with the players they have, and they might take a chance on Glendon Miller, signing him to their roster and cutting someone that they have. He hasn't shown a whole lot, but can he do that in the preseason? It is interesting that Christian Roland Wallace has found himself on the lower end of the roster from where we expected him to be, especially as he contributed to the defense last year in his rookie UDFA season. But if Christian Roland Wallace and Glendon Miller had been in the same draft class, I think it would have been Glendon Miller who made the roster instead of Christian Roland Wallace. That being the case, it is interesting that Glendon Miller has been so quiet in camp and is seemingly in danger of not making the roster or the practice squad. But I do think he is a real NFL safety. That is all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. I have uploaded a video every day for over 2.5 years, and as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.